So you want unity consciousness, 5D consciousness. You want Christ consciousness. And you're on this journey and you are seeking. You are seeking it. You are wanting it. You're doing your practices. You're working on your shadows, your contractions. And you're wanting to touch the light. You're wanting to be in the light. You're wanting to remember. Maybe you understand conceptually. Maybe you've had some really lovely, beautiful, blissful states. Maybe you've had some really vast spiritual experiences. But what you really want, whether it's for new earth or for liberation or from end cessation of suffering or whatever reason, or just you're just guided to move in that direction, you want to not just wake up. It's not just about waking up. It's about actually dissolving your ego. You know that that's an important stage. You know that actually we can't get to unity consciousness until we have an ego dissolution. Until you've had it, it's hard to know what that is actually like within your own direct experience. There's a lot of what we hear is usually somebody's interpretation of someone's experience. And sometimes we hear directly from them. But it's never really able to be conveyed in its entirety. It is something that is known by direct experience. So I wanted to talk about how we want the light and we want to move in that direction and we do all of these practices, but actually when we start to touch the light, it can feel very contracting, right? And we have this expectation that when we touch the light, we're going to feel so much love because we do sometimes, right? But that's just the doorway. That love, it's beautiful and we want it. And we're told that it should be that too, right? We should be love and light and we should be in this more elevated state and all of that. And we understand that if I'm doing shadow work, that might not feel great. I might have to have a dark night of the soul and my ego's going to die and all of these things. But we don't always understand the subtleties of that. And we don't understand until we've had a full experience of it, how touching the light, touching that unity consciousness state, touching the vastness of it can send us into a contraction and then make us withdraw. Right? Because as I said, and as it is about ego dissolution. But the ego, the ego doesn't want to be dissolved, right? So this video is for those people who are on this journey, right? And I want to talk about the ways, the subtle ways that the ego can contract that make us truly believe that something is going wrong, right? That something is going in the opposite direction than what we want, but actually it is going in the perfect direction. And so here we want to apply some discernment. We want to be able to discern from when we're in a contraction because actually there is some danger, and we're in a contraction when we're actually dissolving the ego and there is no danger. And we should continue to walk that pathway. And so firstly, what is the ego, right? What is the ego? So the ego is this construct that is here to keep you alive, right? It's here to keep you physically alive. So it's going to warn you if there is a potential danger, even if that is, we have lots of patterns and it's because we perceived danger where there wasn't actual danger. It felt like danger at the time when we were kids and we grew up with those patterns. Or it could be actual physical danger. Now, all of that is physical danger, right? And potentially could harm you in a way that your life could be in danger, right? You don't fit into the tribe, you're going to be starved, right? You're abandoned and starved, right? Or, if you have actual somebody's chasing you, or whatever physical thing is happening. Yes, we want the ego, right? So we want the discernment to know, yes, this is dangerous, or if we feel it's dangerous to our survival, is it or isn't it? But the ego equally wants survival. It doesn't want dissolution. It doesn't want a spiritual awakening, right? It's not looking for that, because the ego is the identity. The ego is the identity that this is known through, right? So the ego wants you to have an experience as a separate being. That's the whole point of separation consciousness. Nothing wrong with it. It's just an experience, just a way we can experience reality. We can experience ourselves. So nothing inherently wrong with the ego, but its job, its design, right? Designed by the system, right? Its job is to stay alive in both of those situations, in actual physical danger, because it wants you to continue, right? It wants the body to continue. And in that spiritual awakening journey, it does not want that, because then it dissolves. And it's very clever. It's not really intentionally doing anything, these things, it's just programmed, right? It's programmed. But it wants to stay alive. So we need the discernment. Is the ego, am I having a contraction, right? That can be very physical contraction, because there's actual danger or perceived danger to my physical safety, or is it because I'm going to dissolve this ego and it doesn't want to go? And so I just want to talk about the ways that that can show up, right? And then I'm going to talk about what we can do about it. So first way that it can show up is that we have confusion, right? But confusion is a portal to awakening if we allow it to be. But as humans, confusion means we are potentially unsafe, right? Humans don't like confusion. Humans like certainty. Humans like to know, why is this happening? Is this dangerous? Or is this going to be something expansive? Which direction do I want to move it towards it or away from it, right? So humans do not inherently like no meaning. They do not like confusion, right? That's why we're meaning makers. What does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean about me? What do they think about me? Okay. Who am I in this? What does this mean for the world? What does it mean? I mean, endless meaning makers. We want to name everything. We want to label everything. We put it neatly in its box now. Now we will know. We don't have to guess the next time we interact with it if it's safe or if it's dangerous. That way we can move on to the next thing, right? So it's what a human ego does, right? The way that human mind works by default is to be a meaning maker. So confusion is very difficult, very unsettling. But as I said, it's a portal to awakening. So I'm not talking about when we can be on a spiritual journey and suddenly we're confused about, should I go to work? Should I, should I move to somewhere, like move away from the city? I'm not talking about that sort of confusion where we need to make some sort of decision, take an action in life, because otherwise we can get stuck and we can get lost in that sort of confusion, spiritual confusion. We want to find a resolution, take some action, do something, right? It might be that we just sit and contemplate for a while, but we don't want to get ourselves into a place where we've suddenly, like, we're so lost, right? And there is a time for that too. But I'm not talking about that sort of confusion. I'm talking about when we're trying to understand what this means. So maybe we hear one person's perspective, and then there's another person's perspective, and then maybe another one. And we're sort of in between. Which one is the truth? Which one is the truth? We're trying to know what truth is. We're trying to know, is this the best practice? Is this the way to do it? Is this how I do it? This doesn't make sense. But what about this option and this option? And the mind starts trying to figure it out, tries to find some certainty, right? That's why, there's the koans, right, where the teachers would give the student these riddles that the student couldn't really resolve. Because what the teacher wants is for them to get to a state of confusion where the ego mind can no longer understand what the answer is. It can try, is it this answer? Is it this answer? Is it this answer? And it just can't settle on any of them, right? Because the truth is, like, reality is a paradox. All things are true. But that aside, before we get there, we want that certainty. So in that discomfort, what happens is we want to decide, oh, yes, it's this, I've got it, I've got it. And then the ego feels settled, and the ego's like, oh, yes, good. Now I've come back to being the one who makes the meaning. So there's no ego dissolution there that's going to happen. Instead, what is going to happen is we're going to go back to the ego and we're going to continue on that path for a while. But if we stay in that confusion, right, what happens eventually is the ego will surrender, right? And as the ego surrenders, we can start to touch that light. We start to touch the light. We start to just relax and surrender because the light's always there. Unity consciousness is always there. 5D is always there. When we start to touch that, right? But the doorway is the confusion. So we need to allow ourselves to be in that type of confusion. I don't know. And you want to be the one who watches the mind, right? Have the confusion. Oh, here you go. You think this and you think this and you think this. When you become the mind, right? When you're looking from the lens of the mind and you are engaged in trying to figure it out, then, don't you're not going to figure it out, right? Or you might come to a conclusion. So you want to come back and be the one eating the popcorn consciousness, watching the mind movie, right? The mind will figure things out. Be in that place, wait for the mind just to drop, and then go into that emptiness. Right, so that confusion that feels really jarring when we're starting to touch the light, right? The light is coming to us, and now we're getting confused by it. Let it be there. Let it be your doorway. So the second way that we can get confused and become have a contraction, right? Within our physiology, we're contracted by this is when we actually, in a more conscious way, touch the light, right? So let's say we're meditating or we're in a channeling session, right? We're channeling. I've seen this with people, and people have told me this as well when they're meditating. They will get to a point where they get to the emptiness. And immediately as they get to the emptiness, they want to fill it with content, right? Because the system can't take that emptiness. And the ego, it's just like, oh, I'm sensing there's an emptiness and I don't like that. I feel like I'm dissolving. So I'm going to cram in all the stuff, right? So I can come back and there can be an identity and there can be some content, and we're not going to go to this empty place, right? Because in the system might not be used to it yet. You might need to just gradually move in, need to build some capacity, right? To hold that light, hold the emptiness. It's vast, right? You're swimming in an ocean with nothing to hold on to, and that can feel terrifying. The ego feels like, I'm gonna die. I can't swim here. There's no content or nothing for me to attach to. Ego wants to attach, right? That's how we stay in the 3D because we attach to the things, attach to density. So what happens is we go into that 3D state immediately. We touch the vastness, right? The emptiness. We started to dissolve a bit. We became a nobody for a moment. And then when we don't stay with it, right? Because sometimes we can't, and it's important to honor that and come out of it. But sometimes prematurely we come out of it, right? By going into the 3D, and the 3D mind will feed you with what it knows. So whatever it can think of. So sometimes it will give you lots of, information about this is how the world is, and this is what's going to happen now. And sometimes those are genuine, like channelings or whatever, information come through, downloads, but sometimes the mind's trying to make sense. So it wants to fill it, doesn't want to go to that actual emptiness. Because if you stay in the emptiness, you'll still get like information at the other end. But we need to go through the emptiness. We to take a baggage, go into the emptiness, and then see what's play in that place, right? But instead, it's gonna, like I said, it's gonna try to find the information it has. So it's gonna try and get more content about maybe ascension or about this or that or whatever. The other thing it's gonna do is it might think, ah, right, it's not really thinking, but it might start to bring in information, the thoughts you've had about perhaps where you've had shadows and you've had trauma and things that have been difficult for you to process. And then actually you're in a place where you pretty much resolved it and there's not a charge there anymore. And but it will those thoughts still lingering, those thoughts are like your default thoughts. So it'll bring them in again. Oh yeah, there's this. I remember when this happened. Oh my God, I don't think I can trust of this. And suddenly you're thinking about all of these issues that you've had in the past or worries you have for the future, right? And it's because you touch the vastness and it wasn't comfortable. There was a contraction in the body and then it wanted to shrink back and it brings in all the thoughts and things. So now what happens after that session, let's say, different things can happen. The first thing is you can feel like, I can't trust this, right? I don't like this. I feel too agitated in this, right? And then you can, or the information that maybe came into you, you can now go off and make another story about it and tell everybody about it. What this and this and this is going to happen and da da da. That's not always wrong, but did I get lost in it? Did I substitute this emptiness for this story? Instead of staying in the emptiness, did I just go make, a whole like 10 blogs about it and share it with everybody I know? And are we now talking about this rather than ego dissolution? Or we might say, oh yeah, all the content came in about the past and who did this to me and what I did and all these things. And so what do we do there? Now we have to go on a journey of more shadow work, more delving into the past, more unraveling things, which may not be necessary. Sometimes it is. If there's charge, we want to be with it, right? But sometimes we're just bringing it in because there's nothing, we don't know what else to bring in, right? The mind's bringing something in. So again, we need that discernment. We need to think to ourselves, is this actually something, or did I touch the vastness? Did I touch the emptiness? Was I dissolving? Was I becoming a nothing, right? That ultimately makes me everything. But as I touched the nothingness, did my system contract? And does it now want to fill it with stuff? And what stuff did it fill it with? Right. And again, you have discernment. Is this stuff relevant right now? Does this support my journey right now? Right. And then the third thing we want to do, oh, sorry, the third thing that can come up is when we are in the presence of somebody else, right? And this can go both ways. This can be our presence is contracting to people, and it can be that other people's presence is contracting to us. So I've experienced this both ways. And, early on, when I was experiencing this unity consciousness and I was feeling that vastness, I would be in the company of people and they would be very irritated by me doing nothing, not telling them to do anything, just like very irritated with me. And I've had that experience where I've been in the presence of somebody who's holding a lot of this unity consciousness frequency. And I've felt like, oh gosh, like I have a specific teacher, like years ago when I would first meet with him, I would feel like, oh, I know what's coming. I know. Like I understood at least that, you know, every time I meet him, he's touching my shadow, my contractions, my wounds, right? The things that obscure me from being able to stay in this state. But I still knew that after being with him, even though it would be very nice and enjoyable, I would feel like shit because everything was there, everything was touched. He wasn't doing anything much, to be honest. We weren't interacting a lot or, talking a lot, but it would touch those parts. And so there are two things here. we might think, oh, that there's something wrong with that person, whether it's a teacher or just another person, right, in your life. And now we start to have a make more meaning, right? We make more meaning around who is this person. We start to judge them. We start to judge ourselves, right? Instead of actually thinking, oh, what arose in that moment? I interacted with somebody with a high frequency, and that was revealing what wants to move through, what's ready to move through. Okay, so now we don't like that person. Now we're suspicious of that. And of course, we want to use our discernment. Perhaps there is something about that person, right? That is our system's warning us against. But if there isn't anything, if they're not really doing anything to you, right? If they're just being themselves, right? But you feel like, oh, when I'm with them, I don't feel good afterwards. We need to understand why that is, right? Are they really creating some sort of turmoil for you because they're not a person you need in your life? Or is it again, you've touched the light? So again, discernment. And the other side, the flip side of that, when you're holding the light and somebody comes to you, and I also experienced this where, I would hold the light and then people would get irritated and agitated by me. I would just not understand why they're so irritated in the beginning. And that can make you feel like, oh, I want to fit in again. And the ego's like, yes, let's fit in again. But if you can just hold that, right? If you can hold that frequency and not want to move away from it and not read that contraction of other people's reaction to you as something you're doing wrong, because that can be very difficult, right? When people are just irritated by you. Now, it's not like you're spouting all the spiritual knowledge or anything at them, even just with them in their presence and them in your presence. But it can make you feel like, oh, I want to go small again. I want to contract again so that I don't lose people, right? So that I'm not the weird one. Right. So we want to see these subtle ways that touch in the light can create contraction for us. But this is not the type of contraction we want to shy away from. So I want to talk about the three important things here. So the first thing, as I've mentioned, is discernment. We want discernment. We want to ascertain, is this actual danger, right? Is this danger that there's some danger to my life or my survival? Do I need to really move away from these people, these situations, this circumstance? Or is this that I'm touching the light? And yes, I want to honor that there's a movement away from it. Like I don't want to force myself, you must stay here, right? Because you can't really. But I don't want to force myself. I want to be gentle. I want to be loving. But I'm going to recognize, oh, I touched something so vast. And that's why I'm contracting. It's just touching something, right? It's touching the layer that obscures me from holding the light and embodying it and having a more direct experience of it as it. So the first thing, discernment. The second thing is we want to be uh, in the sensation, right? So we don't want to go into the stories. We want to just be with that pure level of sensation because what's happening is we could say the light, right? That vastness, that unity consciousness state, we could say, it's touching the physiology, it's touching the matter, right? And it's always there. It's just we have an awareness of it now as we start to be with it more, right? In that intentional way. And as it touches a matter, we want to stay at that first level of where it's touched the matter. And that's going to be at the level of sensation. It's, the meaning making, the thoughts, the emotions, it all comes later, right? You'll have a sensation, then there'll be an emotion, right? Then you're going to have some thoughts, then you're going to have like this overall feeling about it, then you're going to do some behaviors. We don't need to go all the way out there. We just want to stay at that initial level of sensation. And if there are thoughts, whatever, the emotions come up, that's fine, be with it too. But if we can, initially we want to stay with that level of sensation. And so in the moment, we may contract and may withdraw, honor that. But then when you can come back to it, be with it, allow it to be there, build your nervous system to have more capacity, right? There are different nervous system practices where we want to build capacities. We go into the sensation, any sensation, right? And we come out, we go in and we come out, right? We're teaching our system, don't worry about going into sensation, right? Because that's what we're trying to avoid, the sensation. You can come in and you can leave. And then you can come in and it builds a greater capacity within the nervous system. So you can do those practices on the side, when there isn't contraction. And then when the contraction arises, you can stay with it. I touched the vastness. And if possible, like I touched the vastness, I felt contracted, I wanted to move away, but I'm going to try to stay with the contraction, not with the vastness. I'm going to try and stay with the contraction. I'm going to try to stay with what it stirred in me that is ready to be digested and alchemized. Can I stay with that? Right? If you can't, that's okay. Ground, come back to it. But if you can stay with it, especially in the moment, if you can stay with it, then try to do that. Of course, we never want to get to overwhelm. We want to always stay within like the parameters that the body knows to stay within, right? But if we are immediately trying to get out of it and escape it, then we never get to touch that layer. We never get to alchemize and digest that layer. And then the third thing is, and I've mentioned all these things as I've been speaking, but it is about meaning making. So we want to avoid meaning making as much as we possibly can because that's not present moment, right? Meaning making is what did the past mean and what does it mean about the future? It's not what's actually here right now. There's not a lot here right now, usually, right? It's not of this meaning here right now. There's nothing. We just stay in the moment. There's just not a lot going on. It's why we feel good because we don't have any stories. And it's not to say we can't enjoy stories. It's not to say we don't ever make any meaning. But if we're on this journey, if we're on this pathway, we want to dissolve the ego. So we want to refrain from building stories from that 3D separation consciousness, right? We've got a little raft. Maybe there's like the separation consciousness, there's a little raft. And then we've got unity consciousness. And I think this is something the Buddha said about he's just building a raft for people, right? And you're supposed to like get off the raft. I don't think that's verbatim, but yeah, along those lines, get on, leave, you've got a small, you can't take all your stuff with you, right? On the small raft, all of your meaning making, all the stories that you've had, you've got to leave behind, become nothing, right? As you go to unity consciousness, you become nothing. And from there, you'll know what to do and what not to do. But to get there, you've got to dissolve the ego, the stories, the judgments, right? You don't want to do more meaning making. So, just a quick recap. We want when we are touching the light and we're feeling that contraction, right, which is usually felt as within our body, within our physiology, as there's some sort of danger here. And we need to know what the danger is, make the meaning, right? What do we want to do? We want to have some discernment. Is this real danger or did I touch the light? We want to be with the sensation, stay at the level of the sensation as much as we can, for as long as we can. If we need to move out, ground, come back to it if you can, and build capacity within your nervous system to hold more. And the third thing is we want to refrain from meaning making. We want to not build more stories because we can't put more stories on the raft, right? To 5D, to unity consciousness, to oneness. We can't. Nothing wrong with the stories, but if you're on that journey, you need to get there and then just do what you're going to do. But you don't want to take the stories with you. You want to dissolve that ego. You want to dissolve the identity. Because when you get there, you recognize that, it's not that you stop being a person, right? You have all of the preferences of a person. You are more of a person. You're more human. You're more forgiving of whatever the human does, whatever it thinks. Like you don't care. You just love it because you don't have the personal attachment anymore, right? There isn't the clinging to it means something. How do I survive if I'm like this, if I think this, if I do this, if you do this? It doesn't have all of that. It's not in danger anymore. It doesn't have fear in the same way anymore. Right? It only has fear if something's chasing it or whatever, right? There's actual need for fear. It's very much more in the moment. It knows it's one aspect of infinite expressions of all that is. And so what is there to worry about, right? Nothing. But to get there, to become more of that, to embody that, right? To embody the form and the formless, to merge them, to marry them, we need to let the ego go and the practices of the ego and the fears of the ego and be okay to touch the light. So I would love to hear about your journey and what you're experiencing. Do you experience these things? Do you experience other ways that the light makes you contract? What do you do? I hope this video has been helpful. And yeah, please do reach out. I work with people to help them to be able to hold the light in a way that actually it can lead to real embodiment, not just that sense of, dissolution of ego, but what do we do next also, right? We want to embody the light. We want to live as humans, not run away, not escape. We want this reality, but we want to do it from a place of liberation, not from attachment, not from fear, not from separation, but from knowing we're this one unified field of consciousness, and all of us are just these beautiful arisings. So if you would like to work with me, please do reach out. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Sending you much love. We are one.